Hello everyone, this is Christopher the Artist here. Welcome back to another video here on General Spear Creates, where today we are here with part 5 of my Republic Commando tutorial, where we are going to be focusing on the backpack today. This is probably one of the most complex parts of the entire Republic Commando project. It is a lot of shimming, a lot of seam work and everything. But as you could see, it turned out great in terms of the finished product, and we're going to be going over the process and how to go about finishing your basic backpack for your very own Republic Commando. We're not going to be focusing on doing the lights in this particular video. We're going to be saving that for a future video. But for right now, we're just going to be focusing on the main frame, and I'll show you how that process goes about. So as mentioned, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is kind of the setup here of what you have in the beginning. This is two halves that need to be joined together. And coming with the pack itself is this particular frame plate, which is normally just stuck on here, or it might be shipped separately, but I peeled it off with some pliers and whatever, and I have this 3D printed frame itself from Cloning Around. It is a lovely little frame that is kind of the remastered number plate that we're going to add to the pack later on. It fits over the opening perfectly, and we're going to be post-processing that later on. For right now, we're going to focus on the pack itself. It's important that we're going to need to clean this up as even as possible. I'm going to show you how to do that in the process. Both front and back halves really just need this nice straight edge as much as you possibly can. So to get started with that, we're going to go ahead and tape an edge all the way around. And basically it just starts kind of how we did the arm parts. We're just taking some simple painter's tape, lining it up as best we can, kind of finding where that edge is. It's not really defined from like the buck transition, but overall it's going to help us with the process of making sure that the cleanup goes nice and smooth. And then we're just taking these Lexan scissors to kind of just go around and get all the small little rough edges. I'm specifically using the curved Lexan blades as opposed to the straight ones. The curved ones will allow to get into the plastic itself without much hindrance. And now we're going to go ahead and drill out this opening. This is going to be kind of crucial for being able to access the backpack just in general, and we're going to be drilling some pilot holes kind of all the way around the pack itself. And then once we have those pilot holes drilled, we're going to go ahead and tape off the perimeter of the opening itself. This will essentially help us get a guide as far as when we score and eventually cut away the excess material. I initially tried to go at it with the Lexan scissors, but it's ultimately just better to go and do a little bit of a different process. And in particular, I am just taking the drill and just cutting along using the Lexan scissors. I believe I even use some nippers at one point off screen. Those can definitely help. Yep, there we go. Some of those nippers that come with like 3D printers kind of deal, but you can find them at the hardware store. Doesn't really matter. And what we're left with is this plate that we just cut out, and then all that's left really is that you just need to file down the little burrs that are left behind. You can use a rotary tool with a sanding drum here, but I just opt to do the filing just to make sure that I don't go over any bits of tape or whatever or mess up with the Dremel at all. Now we're going to go ahead and drill some holes in the backpack here. This is for mounting the backpack to the back plate itself. The reason why we're doing this is because I like using bolts for my backpack attachments. You can try your hand at magnets if you want. I have found magnets in the past to just not be that reliable, especially if you're, walking around or even running around a con kind of deal. You want to be conscious of the fact that you don't want to go, too deep or too high kind of deal. Well, not too deep, but too high on the back plate itself, so you don't get the top edge of the of the chest plate, or not the chest plate, the back plate in particular. And we're not even doing that many holes. It's just 2 at the top and then 2 on the bottom portion of the pack itself. All right, once we have those holes drilled, it's time to take it off, and we have a lot of shimming to do. We're using some thick viscosity glue because I don't want these pieces to go anywhere. But you're essentially just taking a lot of that extra plastic that came in the kit, and you are just gluing and clamping all the way around the parts. I don't really use any accelerator with this particular part of the video, mainly just because I want to make sure that the glue solidifies in place and making sure that there's not really any issues or any problems with the glue bubbling up or anything like that. We're now going to go ahead and glue both of these halves together, and we're going to start with the bottom edge just to make sure that we get a nice edge-to-edge transition. And we do want a little bit of that glue bubbling up, and this is actually where we will be applying some accelerator just to make sure that things stay in place. Once we have our bottom edge secured, we're going to work around the sides and the top. And I'm even doing kind of the inside to make sure that things are uniformly glued. We don't want things to get out of place as much as possible. And this is where having some tape or having some sort of setup where you can kind of hold things in place as needed as you use the accelerator. Having a second pair of hands helps, but I didn't have any at the time. You're kind of just slowly going through each part and hitting it with accelerator, kind of in stages, just to make sure that things stay in place. You kind of gradually work your way around the pack itself. Now, bear in mind, it is not going to be 100% perfect. There's going to be still a lot of cleanup work left to do. This is all about trying to get things as close as possible to make sure that it minimizes the amount of cleanup that you have looking forward from this process. Kind of just buttoning up the seams, making sure that the top is all good, reinforcing with glue where needed. And then kind of just going back over any areas that may be lifting up or may have missed. Kind of just pushing those shims in place. All right, once you've the pack all shimmed up and glued up, we're going to go ahead and apply our lovely mixture of ABS sludge. This is a mix that we've showcased before, which is some ABS scrap along with acetone. It's kind of this milkshake consistency, or maybe a little bit thicker than a milkshake consistency. We're applying that all over the seams. You want to try to apply this stuff as smooth as possible. This will help with the cleanup process, making sure that it actually is not as much work on your end as much as possible. You'll want to make sure that you're doing this in a ventilated area, that you have respirators on. Technically, gloves help too. You'll notice I'm not wearing them, but, you know, that's kind of a must. Next, we have this hardware here. This is some 1/2-inch bolts that we're going to be adding some washers to, and this is going to be what is going to be holding our backpack to our back plate. Now, if you're opting not to use bolts, you can kind of skip this step if you want. But we're gonna go ahead and add these washers here. And the reason why we're doing this is because we don't want the plastic to have any chance of fracturing when we, repeatedly attach and detach the backpack with the bolts. We want to make sure that there is some additional reinforcement and really just making sure that things are there for the longevity. I'm gluing the washer to the bolt itself to begin with, and then we're going to go ahead and glue this from the inside of the back plate itself. Excuse me, not the back plate, the backpack itself. I'm essentially pushing up from underneath and holding it in place. You do that in all of the holes that you've drilled into this point. Once you have those in place, we're going to go ahead and add some washers on the front side. So we've added some, of course, on the inside, now on the front, just to make sure that things are really nice and secure for, again, the life of this pack, because I hope to have this around for a long, long time. Alrighty, now we get into the fun part, which is sanding. Everybody's favorite process as a maker. Honestly though, the sanding for this pack is not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. We're starting off with an orbital sander, or you can just go in with a mouse sander, it doesn't really matter. Having one of these tools is very helpful and very beneficial for knocking down the now cured ABS sludge. And this is such that we can kind of get it ready and get it prepped for when we do our Bondo application. Which of course is using about a golf ball size ratio to a pea size of hardener. Just slathering all over the seams, little bits at a time. I have a respirator on, I have gloves on, and I'm making sure that the area is well ventilated to make sure that, all those stinky fumes go out the window and not into my lungs. And just like with the ABS sludge, we're making sure that every area with the Bondo is applied as smooth as possible so that we have an easy time sanding. Alright, and with that, we have now, since then, we have sanded and then applied our coat of primer just to kind of see where any remaining little small bits and dents are. So we're going ahead and applying some Bondo spot putty. And we've even applied them a little bit in the wood handles as well, which may or may not come attached with the pack itself. But it's good to kind of just fill in those wood grains to make sure that it doesn't look like wood. Alright, from there we're going to be focusing on the 3D printed frame. Now, I've gone ahead and already post-processed this piece in particular using some Bondo spot putty as well as some filler primer, and I've painted it kind of this slate gray to begin with. And from there, we're going to be going in and filling in the right side window with some basic acrylic black. And we're going to be also filling in the center window as well with the same black. Moving back to the backpack, now that the Bondo spot putty is cured and dried, we're going to be using some 220 now, and kind of just going over the entire pack itself. And this is kind of just, the process of making sure that everything is all nice and smooth. We want to make sure that all of these little bits and pieces are, clean and sanded and all well and ready to go for paint. Now for the Republic Commandos, they are weathered sons of guns. They get pretty dirty and everything, but it's still nice to start with a nice template to make sure that that things are just ready for paint. Because, at one point, these guys did have shiny armor, and it's kind of nice to have the evolution of making sure that things are nice and pristine first, and then you can go to town with the weathering and degrading over time. So now we're going in kind of the final phase and doing some wet sanding. Wet sanding itself is a nice process to do, especially to make sure that any little remaining little burrs are picked up and you're essentially ready to go for the painting process. Speaking of which, we're going to go ahead and start with the gray primer. You can use whatever kind of color primer you want, but you just want a primer to make sure that the sanded areas and the paint have nice adhesion. And then we're going to be going in with some flat white as a base. Once we have the flat white, we're going to be moving right into the taping off and applying our base colors. I taped off a few of the different sections here to follow the references. We're going to be applying our gravel paint all over, kind of as our base layer. And then we're going to be moving in with our stealth paint, which of course is our kind of our main color throughout this process. Again, I kind of taped off to make sure that things are all looking spick and span as far as references go. I do have the references kind of up here off to the side to make sure that I'm applying the paint in different areas. And just like with the portions of the armor we've done so far, I'm applying a black mist over the entire pack itself for some additional pre-weathering. This is just nice to do to make sure that you have a nice even coat overall. It even does a little bit of cell shading, which is kind of present on the models. But it's just nice to get that grime and definition very early on. And after that process, we're going to be going ahead and gluing on the number plate, which is just as simple as applying some super glue here, some thick viscosity stuff to make sure that it holds, making sure that we don't go into what is going to be the windowed area itself, and then applying and pressing it into place until it holds. Lastly, all we need to do now is apply a little bit of black detail and apply some cell shading. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and apply some dots. This is going to be a dot right in the front here, which is a detail that is showcased in the references. This is going to be, this trapezoid here in the front is also going to be painted black, which is this little recess area. Kind of just going in slow to make sure that things are all covered and I'm not going to bleed the paint anywhere that I don't want it. Not that I can't clean this up, but just, it minimizes that process. And then we're going in and doing some cell shaded lines. So on these bottom box-like areas of the pack itself, on what would be the front of the pack, as opposed to the back, which is, I guess, the back-facing view towards the back plate, we have these cell shaded lines on both halves. You don't even need to get really specific with these lines, because these kind of are just there as far as an aesthetic is concerned. Got these two lines in the crevices here. In the creases of the plate, or of the back plate itself, or not the back plate, the backpack itself, geez. We have these little kind of box outlines that also get this cell shading. I kind of did mark these off in pen before, but I just wanted to make sure that I had my my registration lines there, so to speak. That I wasn't painting anywhere where I wasn't supposed to. And again, these don't need to be super exact. There's another little dot on the side here. And then there's this nice long line that hugs the angled edge there and goes along the side there. And then we have this little line set up where it starts off with a flat and then goes right into an angle as it goes up the backpack. And we're going to repeat the same thing on the opposite side minus the dot. All right, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, the backpack is now complete. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we have this LED panel here that we're going to be including in a future video where we do the number plate, and I will show you all how to go about doing that. It's a very simple process, but I will go through step by step on how to do that. The pack itself came together very, very well. I do aim to have the option to add accessories at some point, but this thing is light, it is mobile, it is ready to go otherwise for the next stages of the number plate and weathering. But I thank you so much for following along. If this video helped in any way, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment, and feel free to subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you all in the next one.